Welcome to Mocktails and Masterpieces with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. Today's episode is sponsored by Anthony Team Realty. The upcoming episode was originally recorded in October of 2021.
Hello, I'm Dana Stone, the Executive Director of the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, and I have with me today Richard Lin, who is our guest soloist for our upcoming concert on November 20th, celebrating Mother Earth. Richard, why don't you let everyone know a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Lin. I'm a violinist. I am originally born in Phoenix, but I grew up in Taiwan, where my family is. And I moved back to the States when I was about 16, went to the Curtis Institute of Music for my undergrad, and then I graduated. And then I went to the Juilliard School for my master's. And now I'm just playing solo, and also I play with the Lincoln Center Chamber Music Society as a chamber music musician too.
Wonderful. Well, and if you'd like to know a little bit more about Richard, he was so kind as to fill out actually a blog-style interview that's available on our website, icomusic.org. So as you probably are aware, if you're coming to this concert or watching this video, we are presenting Vivaldi's Four Seasons, which is one of the quintessentially most popular pieces for violin. And of course, Richard will be joining us as the soloist on that. So you've obviously played this piece a number of times. And this particular collaboration is somewhat many years in the making, thanks to a pandemic. So can you tell us about a little bit about kind of the preparation process for a piece you know probably quite well? And also the long time span it took us to make this production happen.
Right. If I don't remember it wrong, my last concert was supposed to be this concert, like right before the pandemic outbreak and everything was shut down. So I still remember I was in the exact same place because I'm staying with the host family, which also hosted me during my Indianapolis competition. And remember I was here, and then the day before the rehearsal started, my manager called me and told me that the concert was canceled. And starting from that point, everything was canceled. And
oh my goodness.
So then I didn't play any concert until in late July. I went back to Taiwan, which is already 3 or 4 months after the whole shutdown. And I don't know if you know, Taiwan has been doing a great job regarding controlling the pandemic.
Okay.
And so we were able to do almost normal live concert, but just with everybody with masks.
Okay.
And so actually I play a couple concerts every month in Taiwan. You know, because all the foreigner artists cannot go into Taiwan because of the pandemic. So they had to ask all these Taiwanese musicians if they can step up for the musicians. So I actually played a lot of concerts during this pandemic where the world was shutting down. But, you know, in Taiwan, we actually had a chance to play concerts. So I always feel very lucky because I saw a lot of friends struggling. No matter musician from the orchestras or, you know, chamber music musicians or the soloists, they all had to stop for quite a long time.
Sure.
But anyways, now the Four Seasons is coming back, and I'm really looking forward to playing it. As you all know, that this is a very famous popular piece by Vivaldi, and it's actually one of the first concerti that I started to learn when I was little, and it used to be one of my favorites. Oh, I mean, it still is my favorite, but you know, when I was little, because I started the violin, and then it's actually one of the first concerto that I learned because, you know, as a kid, you always want to, you know, play with the orchestra, and that was always my dream. And then I remember when I was about high school, my first experience playing the spring and summer concerto with an orchestra was in high school. I played with my high school orchestra. It was a memorable experience, of course. And as time goes on, I listen to a lot of music and I read a lot of stuff about this piece. So I found out that in a lot of Baroque writing, there's actually a lot of freedoms, like improvisation and also ornamentation you can play, especially in the slow movement. So for the fourth season this time, I add a little, I added quite a lot of personal interpretation into the piece. So you can find that if you look at the music, especially in the second movements of the all four seasons, I put many ornamentation in the long note, so it sounds more interesting instead of just a long note. That's more like a tradition they would do 300-400 years ago during Vivaldi's time. So everybody has their own rendition. So it's kind of interesting to hear different people perform on the same piece, especially Baroque music. So I'm very very much looking forward to my first collaboration with the ICO and Maestro Matthews. Yep.
Thank you. Yes. Well, we're excited as well. And I have to ask, being in the more logistical side of our organization in Taiwan, when you were performing throughout 2020, we were performing as well for the most part, but not with audiences. Everything we were doing was virtual, which is still something that we have available right now. Was that something that they explored as well? Or were they really just going traditionally back to a ticketed audience with a seat?
Well, for the most part, we did like a normal concert with a full house of audience. But for example, during since this May, we actually had a little outbreak, so we had to shut down for 2 to 3 months. Actually, 2021 and during May, and there were no live concerts allowed. So orchestras, they actually planned something like what you did, they make it like a smaller ensemble, and everybody is like, two how do you say 2 meters apart, like 6 feet apart.
Yes.
And everybody with a mask, and they do a virtual concert online, and people can still appreciate art, but it's still very different to me. I mean, going into a real concert versus watching it online, still it's a very totally different experience.
Oh, we totally agree. We've had just a handful of concerts back with live audiences, and just having that conversation and that energy between the audience and the musicians, there's no substitute for that, no matter how hard you try. And it was such a joy for us to be able to continue making music, but to return to a live audience experience for both our musicians and even our audience members has been our ultimate goal, to find a way to do that safely. So we're so excited to do that. I know that you're the 2018 gold medalist of the quadrennial competition, and reality being that 2020 and 2021 have been quite possibly the longest years of our lives. You're almost the longest winner ever. If you can think back to 2018 and that process of the competition, I'm sure our audiences would be very curious to know what that was like for you, what you played, and just a little bit about that experience.
Sure. Since 2011, I started to participate in international competitions. And, Indianapolis competition has always been my dream to even go into, not to mention winning, because it's one of the most significant one in the whole world. Well, I actually consider it's the top 4 in the whole world. So when I was there, I will remember, we had to prepare 4 rounds, including the first round. We did solo Bach sonatas, Paganini, Caprice, and I remember a Mozart sonata, plus a little short encore piece. And then the second round, we did like a recital. So we all had to play one of the Beethoven sonatas, and then another romantic sonatas, and a showpiece plus a commissioned piece. And then the third round and the fourth round is considered the final round. The third one, we play a Mozart concerto. plus a Chrysler arrangement for violin and chamber orchestra. And then the grand final is a romantic concerto. And the special memory for me is, because usually in the final round, people would play something like Brahms, Tchaikovsky, or Sibelius, even Shostakovich. These, like a real competition piece. It's like a crowd pleaser, and also the judges usually prefer those pieces because they play it a lot, so they have their own interpretation, so they can judge easily. But I remember I chose to play the Brooks Scottish Fantasy, which is a very unusual choice during a final of the competition. And actually, in fact, I was told that the 2018 Indianapolis, that was the first time they put the Scottish Fantasy in the list of the final choice. So actually, I was the first one in history ever play that piece in the final. And then I very luckily, very honorably, I got the first prize, and also I won the prize for the romantic concerto. So that's very meaningful for me, because I was very bold to choose the piece, and then because the piece is one of my favorites, and I really want to express my feeling and my heart through the piece, and I'm very glad that it worked out.
Yeah, well, that's exciting, and what a wonderful thing to look back on. So you've already kind of mentioned some of the things you've been able to do over the past few years. Maybe you can share with our audiences what you're on to next. What's next for you? Okay. Where were you most recently, I guess, also?
So during the pandemic, I went back to Taiwan, like I said, and earlier this year, I got invited to teach in the National University of Taipei. So it's actually a full-time professorship. So now I'm teaching both. When I'm in Taiwan, I teach in person, but like, for example, when I come here, I teach virtual lessons. So it's also a new thing for Taiwan to do like virtual lessons as everybody in the world, right? It's because of the new life. Like we're trying to adapt to the new way of working and teaching and learning.
So what's the time difference for you teaching lessons right now? Are you getting up in the middle of the night?
Yeah, it's 13 hours for now, for the winter. 13 hours. So it's either early in the morning or late night. So
oh my goodness.
Cool. And also, I came to New York when when did I come? Early October. And I performed with the Chamber Music Society of the Lincoln Center. We played a concert in San Antonio, and then we played an opening concert at the Alice Tully Hall in Lincoln Center. And then, so after this concert, I actually will fly back to Taiwan immediately to do the required 2 weeks quarantine plus 1 week stay at home quarantine. In Asia, we all have to do that. Like we have to stay in hotel, just that exact room
in a hotel
for 2 full weeks, and then after that 1 week of self quarantine at home. So we cannot do any rehearsal. We cannot go to a public place. No restaurant. Everything else. So it's gonna be tough. It's my first time, but my Taiwanese friend, they have done it many times. So
I'm giving you some tips on how to get by.
Yeah, so they said Uber Eats is your good friend, because the quarantine hotel, they provide foods, but usually they're not as good. Mm-hmm. So they tell me you basically just Uber Eat it every day. Yeah. So then I go back and then quarantine, and right after I got out of the quarantine, I will start the rehearsal with the National Taiwan Symphony Orchestra, and I'm gonna play the Prokofiev Second Violin Concerto with them.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yep.
So I'm always fascinated to learn a little bit about the instrument that you'll be playing on Saturday night. So maybe tell me a little bit about the instrument that you've brought with you for this stay in the United States, essentially. Or did you bring more than one instrument from Taiwan?
Well, actually, I'm currently playing on 2 violins, both on loan from the Indianapolis competition. The first one is the famous Kingo Stradivarius violin, And the other one is the one I'm actually going to play. It's a violin made in 2017, made by American luthier. His name is Sam Zygmuntovich. He's actually one of the most sought after modern violin maker nowadays. So this violin, why did I choose this one? Because to me, it I don't know, the violin projection, the first thing, the most important thing actually is the projection of the violin, because I play a lot of concertos, and I really don't want to be drowned by the large orchestra, especially concerto like Tchaikovsky concerto or Brahms concerto. So orchestra part is always very thick, so you want to be heard, even though the last row of the audience, you want them to hear you too. So so a projection of the violin is always the most important thing that I focus on. So this violin not only has a huge projection, but it has a different layers, and actually I can do a lot of color changing through the violin. Like no matter how I push, how deep I push, it just can give me more potential, So it's like I've been playing this violin for almost 3 years. Actually over 3 years. So since almost 3 years. So I can say I'm pretty in love with this violin. And if I didn't tell you this is a modern violin, I'm sure nobody can tell it's a modern violin, because actually the violin has been worked on antiquing. So actually the violin looks like an old violin instead of new violin. So it's if I didn't tell you, you would never know, because the sound is gorgeous, and the look is also very antique.
I'm excited to hear and see it. I have to ask, because you're traveling a great distance with these very unique and expensive instruments, do you have any travel stories regarding your violins? Do you carry them both on? Do you buy a seat for them? How does that work?
Well, violin is a little bit easier than viola and cellos, Usually I just take them with me, and usually no problem. Sometimes when I travel with my violin and the carry-on, they usually ask me to check in the carry-on. But with violin, I actually never had any problem to bring it up to the cabin. Usually it's okay.
I hope I didn't just jinx you or anything, so that you don't ever have any problems traveling with your instruments.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably enough for today. We're so excited to hear you play, and for this iconic piece, and really this concert that is multiple years in the making, bringing that to fruition just in a few short days. So if you don't have tickets already, you can visit icomusic.org, where we have tickets available. There's live in-person tickets, as well as a virtual option that will be available on demand 10 days following the concert and for 30 days thereafter. So we encourage you to enjoy the ICO, and we look forward to your performance, Richard, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.